A seismic shift is underway, one that few could have predicted even a decade ago. The very foundations of global politics are rumbling, as alliances and loyalties are being reconsidered on a scale not seen since the end of the Cold War. In a move that would have seemed unimaginable just a few years back, 2 European Union member states are now openly contemplating joining the BRICS alliance. This signals a dramatic departure from the EU's traditional alignment with the West. BRICS, which began as a loose coalition of emerging economies, has rapidly evolved into a formidable geopolitical force. Today, it stands as a direct challenger to the dominance of Western institutions and values. The prospect of EU members aligning with BRICS has sent shockwaves through the corridors of power in both Brussels and Washington. Leaders are now grappling with urgent questions about the future of European unity, transatlantic relations, and the very structure of the world order. The fact that EU nations are even considering this path reveals a deep and growing dissatisfaction with the current status quo. There is a rising appetite for a multipolar world where power is more evenly distributed and no single bloc dominates. The ongoing war in Ukraine has only accelerated this trend. It has exposed vulnerabilities within Europe and forced nations to confront the limitations of their existing alliances, prompting a fundamental rethinking of their strategic interests. For EU members to look toward a bloc that includes Russia and China is a stark sign of new pragmatism. It reflects a willingness to engage with former adversaries in pursuit of national interests and economic security. This development challenges the long-standing narrative of a united West. It highlights a world that is becoming increasingly fragmented, unpredictable, and shaped by shifting alliances. The European Union now faces a critical test of its cohesion and purpose. Is this merely a fleeting moment of dissent, or could it be the first visible crack in the foundation of European solidarity? The world is watching closely, as the decisions made in the coming months could reshape not only the future of Europe, but also the global balance of power for years to come. This is a defining moment for the European project, a crossroads that will determine its direction and influence in a rapidly changing world. To truly grasp the significance of BRICS today, we must first understand its origins and evolution. The term BRIC was originally coined in 2001 by economist Jim O'Neill as a catchy investment acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, and China, 4 rapidly growing economies that were expected to shape the future of global markets. At first, it was simply a way for investors to group these emerging markets together, highlighting their economic potential and growth rates. But the idea quickly took on a life of its own. By 2009, these countries began meeting formally, recognizing their shared interests and growing influence. In 2010, South Africa joined, turning BRIC into BRICS and expanding the group's reach to the African continent. What started as a simple financial label soon transformed into a powerful political platform. BRICS became a symbol of the push for a more balanced, multipolar world order, one where power isn't concentrated in the hands of just a few Western nations. To further this vision, BRICS nations established their own financial institutions, such as the New Development Bank and the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, offering alternatives to Western-led systems like the IMF and World Bank. As BRICS grew in confidence, its appeal spread among countries that felt sidelined or underrepresented by the US and its allies. Many developing nations saw BRICS as a chance to have their voices heard on the world stage. In 2024, BRICS made a historic move by expanding its membership, inviting Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE to join its ranks. This marked a major turning point for the group. With this expansion, BRICS now represents a massive share of the world's population, GDP, and oil production. Its economic and political clout has grown dramatically, making it a force to be reckoned with on the global stage. Today, BRICS stands as a powerful alternative to Western dominance, challenging the traditional balance of power and offering new opportunities for cooperation among emerging economies. The fact that even some European Union nations are now considering joining BRICS underscores just how much the global order is shifting. What was once a distant idea is now being seriously discussed in political circles. Not long ago, the idea of EU countries aligning with BRICS would have seemed unimaginable. Yet today, it's a real possibility, reflecting the rapid changes in international relations and the search for new alliances. As the world's power centers are being redrawn, BRICS is at the heart of this transformation, shaping a new era of global cooperation and competition. The European Union was born from the ashes of war, emerging as a bold response to the devastation that swept across the continent during the 20th century. After 2 world wars left Europe shattered, leaders recognized that only by coming together could they prevent future conflict and rebuild their societies. The EU was built to ensure peace through unity, forging bonds between nations that had once been bitter rivals. The vision was simple, yet profound. Lasting peace could only be achieved through cooperation and shared prosperity. Its foundation was distinctly Western, anchored in democracy, the protection of human rights, and the promotion of open market economies. These values became the pillars of a new European identity. NATO, with the powerful backing of the United States, guaranteed Europe's security and cemented its place in the Western Bloc, providing a military shield that allowed the continent to focus on growth and integration. For decades, Europe's allegiance was clear, firmly anchored to the US and committed to upholding a liberal international order. The transatlantic partnership shaped global politics and economics. After the Cold War, the EU expanded eastward, welcoming new members and uniting the continent under the banners of democracy and prosperity. This enlargement was seen as a triumph of Western ideals. Over time, the EU became a global regulatory powerhouse, setting standards that influenced markets and policies far beyond its borders. It stood as a model for regional integration, inspiring similar efforts in Asia, Africa, and beyond. But recent crises, financial turmoil, waves of migration, Brexit, and the war in Ukraine have exposed deep divisions within the Union, testing its resilience and unity. Populist and nationalist movements now question the value of integration, challenging the very principles that once united Europe. Economic vulnerabilities and growing strategic dependencies have sparked intense debate about Europe's future direction and its ability to remain independent on the world stage. Some call for deeper unity, urging stronger cooperation to face global challenges together, while others look for new partners, even outside the traditional Western sphere, seeking to diversify alliances and economic ties. The once unquestioned Western consensus is now fracturing as new powers rise and old certainties fade. The EU faces a historic crossroads, whether to double down on unity and integration or risk fragmentation and diminished influence. The stakes for Europe's identity, stability, and global influence have never been higher as the continent decides its path forward in an uncertain world. In 2025, Hungary and Slovakia shocked Europe by signaling interest in BRICS membership. This move follows years of strategic divergence from Brussels. Hungary's Viktor Orban has long pursued closer ties with Russia and China, prioritizing national sovereignty over EU orthodoxy. Slovakia's Robert Fico echoes this, halting military aid to Ukraine and advocating a foreign policy open to all global powers. Both leaders resent EU pressure on issues like rule of law and social policy, finding BRICS' non-interference principle appealing. Economic woes, high inflation, energy dependence make BRICS' markets and resources attractive. For these governments, joining BRICS is a bold declaration of independence from Western dictates. The BRICS overture by Hungary and Slovakia has rattled Europe's political core. EU leaders warn that aligning with BRICS undermines the Union's shared values and strategic interests. The move threatens to paralyze EU foreign policy, as unity is crucial for confronting global challenges. Legal and practical dilemmas arise. Can a country belong to both the EU and a rival bloc? Nationalist parties across Europe are emboldened, deepening divisions and weakening the political centre. The dream of an ever-closer union is fading, replaced by fragmentation and uncertainty. Europe's global credibility is at stake. How can it act as a unified power if it's divided within? The US views this with alarm, while China and Russia see a strategic victory. The Western-led order faces its most serious internal challenge yet. The consequences could reshape Europe's role in the world. The economic stakes are just as high. BRICS aims to reduce reliance on the US dollar, pushing de-dollarization in global trade. If EU members join, it could fracture the Eurozone and destabilize the single market. Hungary and Slovakia see short-term gains, access to new markets, investment, and cheaper energy. But aligning with BRICS risks fragmenting Europe's economic rules, disrupting supply chains and triggering protectionism. New trade routes could shift Europe's economic centre eastward, undermining traditional Western hubs. The gamble short-term benefits versus long-term instability. The outcome could redefine Europe's economic landscape. The BRICS pivot strikes at Europe's identity. For many, EU membership was about embracing Western values after decades of Soviet rule. Aligning with BRICS, which includes authoritarian states, unsettles younger pro-European citizens. The move deepens social divides between those who see their future with the West and those drawn to nationalism and sovereignty. The debate is about more than economics. It's a battle for the nation's soul. The EU must now confront what it truly stands for: a pragmatic alliance or a community of values. The crisis exposes a loss of confidence in the Western model and a search for new answers. Amid the turmoil, experts urge caution. Some analysts see Hungary and Slovakia's BRICS flirtation as a negotiating tactic to gain leverage with Brussels. Others warn that BRICS is not a unified bloc. Its members have deep internal differences. Joining BRICS could simply swap one set of challenges for another. Economists stress that leaving the EU's single market, even partially, would be economically disastrous. Any gains from BRICS trade would likely be outweighed by losses from new barriers within Europe. Investors crave stability. This move creates uncertainty and risk. Security experts warn of a NATO crisis. How can the alliance function if members build ties with Russia? The risks are immense, political, economic, and security related. The headlines mask a far more complex and perilous reality. Europe stands at a crossroads. The BRICS pivot is a symptom of deeper fractures, crises of unity, confidence, and vision. If Hungary and Slovakia proceed and the EU retaliates, a permanent split could follow, weakening Europe and empowering its rivals. Yet this crisis could also spark much-needed reform, forcing the EU to address its flaws and rebuild consensus. The choice is stark fragment and decline, or reinvent and unite. The decisions made now will determine Europe's fate in the 21st century. The world is watching, as Europe's next steps will shape the global order. The future remains unwritten.